Hey folks, it's Sam, and I'm talking today about the new moon and other major shifts that are coming in September between now and like September 14th, 15th, the middle of the month. That includes the shifts of Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and of, as I say, this new moon in Leo. So check it out. Okay, so I'm doing this live video today because, again, there's a lot of big stuff that's coming. We have a new moon tomorrow in Leo. As you see, the chart is up here right now. And we have this new moon in Leo tomorrow that's happening. Oh, I have this on the 7th. Let me go back. See, I'm always a little, as much as I try to prepare, I'm always a little bit off. So we have this new moon. Now it's the 4th, but as we go forward, 5th, especially into the 6th. Oh, it's actually on the 6th, excuse me. Yeah, that's when we have the new moon, which would be on Monday. And that's in Leo. But we also have Mars and Venus changing signs in the next couple days. So there's a lot of shifting coming up. You see Jupiter's about to go back into Capricorn again. So a lot of stuff to talk about right now. Of course, we're seeing a lot of the sort of combustible things happening right now in the world. You know, there's a lot of combustion going on, as you see there. But even beneath the video here, it says to, you know, that I'm offering a web class where you can learn about this upcoming combustion of Mars, where he's going to be totally combust, and what that means for you. The combustion is when the planets get really close to the sun. And right now, Mars is combust, and he's going to be combust until November 29th. So if you haven't registered yet for this web class, it's totally free. I will put the information there also in the chat, wherever you're watching it. You can click there and just register. You can either watch an instant replay, or you can select a time to watch it. But I do it this way because it's more of a, you know, in-depth class, and you're going to understand what it means for you. Because again, I'm going to be talking about as Mars goes through these 3 signs of Leo, Virgo, and Libra, and how that's going to impact you based on your ascendant. So again, if you're a Cancer, that's going to be your 2nd, 3rd, and 4th houses. So I break all of this out in this web class. It's much more comprehensive than these YouTube videos. And so I will recommend you do that. It's free. Again, you don't have to do anything. You just go and click that link that I just put in the chat, and then you can do it. So again, I offer these things because you know, it doesn't cost me anything. And I can really share some deeper teachings with you, you know, more than just on these quick YouTube videos. But this is some big stuff that we're talking about here today. The new moon will happen in Leo. It'll be in Purva Falguni Nakshatra. And that's going to be on the 6th. You see, it'll be, get this exact time here, hours. It'll be like right around there. So Pacific time, it'll be about 5:30, 5:45 p.m. on the 6th, which will be on Monday. And that's the exact conjunction of sun and moon. They're coming together there. And that starts a new cycle. It's sort of like the sperm meeting the egg, right? Where the sun is like the sperm and the moon is like the egg. And it starts a new cycle, a new 30-day cycle. Now, of course, this is based on the sidereal zodiac, which is what we use in Indian astrology. Every Vedic astrology and astronomy text says Aries and Ashwini begins the zodiac. Boom. So when it's here, you have Aries and Ashwini. They both start. That's where the zodiac circle starts. So once you make that declaration, that means that by the time it gets here, it's Purva Falguni and Leo, right? They're aligned here. From 1320 to 2640 of Leo is Purva Falguni, right? And so that's ruled by the god called Bhagha, the god of delight. And again, you'll also know that there's a total synchronicity, of course, between the nakshatra zodiac and the Rashi. The nakshatra is a portion of the Rashi, which of course operates within that context. So within the context of Leo, which is the king on the kingdom with the power, right? That first section of Leo is Magha, which is literally the throne, where we're sitting on the throne. But then the next section is Purva Falguni, which is where we have this new moon. And imagine if you're sitting on the throne and you have the power. Well, that's pretty delightful. It's a pretty delightful place to be, isn't it? It's good to be king. And the nakshatra of Purva Falguni is where we become aware of this notion that it's good to be king and to have all this power. What am I going to do with that power? Well, maybe I'll sit back and relax and just enjoy it and just sort of delight in all the power I have and sit back and have concubines feed me grapes and fan me and just get fat and lazy. That's one way. Or you can delight in sharing that power. Because again, especially in ancient times, the king wasn't just a political figure that was out on the take and wanting to exploit everyone in the kingdom. The king was actually a Raja, or a king of Dharma, like Lord Krishna was a king, Lord Rama was a king. So the signification of Leo as a king should be seen in a higher context, as a Kshatriya and as a sattvic being that wants to provide and take care of the kingdom, right? Just like Lord Rama was an enlightened master, an avatar. Lord Krishna was an avatar, an incarnation of God. So in this context, Leo and the quality of Leo as being royal is like a sovereign, like a father, right? You'll see, and Cancer is like the mother, and Leo is the father, right? The divine father. And again, just like a father in this lifetime will sacrifice for his children and do what he can to make sure that his family is provided for, so too the good king would provide for his kingdom. He already has the power. He doesn't need to take the wealth from the kingdom. That's not a good king. That's a bad king, quote, so to speak. And so that's the tension between Leo and Aquarius. Leo is the king on the throne, and Aquarius is the citizens that share and have a common acumen and wealth and, collective responsibility with each other. So we're seeing how important these issues are right now in the world. In the political situations with, here in the U.S., we've seen so much of this lately with whether it's sort of contentiousness over how to deal with COVID and, mask wearing and vaccines and our personal responsibilities and obligations and expectations of each other and our expectations to each other. Like, I might decide, let's say, not to get a vaccine, but then that might affect people around me because I might spread COVID. Well, but who am I as part of the collective to insist that other people do this thing because I think that's what they should do? This is very Leo Aquarius. And then we have a government, a centralized power that's supposed to look out for the common good. Well, is the common good better served by making sure that every individual gets to do what they want, even if it's almost, there's, in fact, evidence at this point that it might harm the collective, because we've seen how, for example, like with vaccine rates, the countries that have the highest vaccination rates have the lowest hospitalizations. The data is in, it's not a debatable point. But does that mean then that the state has to mandate that and encroach on personal liberties? So again, this isn't just in the US. Of course, this is a global thing that's going on, but in the US, it's worse. You can just look at vaccination rates. And so again, these are things that are getting grappled with now. These are the things that are getting juggled. And notice I didn't come down on either side of it. So save your hatred for me. I don't want to hear it. I'm just saying these are the two ends of the spectrum. And we're seeing this play out now. Again, I just saw today, I was planning on maybe making a trip to Europe. Well, now the EU has banned U.S. citizens because the vaccination, because the rates are getting so much higher again now. Again, so now I'm like, okay, well, but does that mean that citizens should force people to get it? Again, so it's this back and forth, or that the government, which is the Leo, should come in and start to mandate that. Well, then the citizens can start to revolt. We also had just had a huge landmark decision in Texas, and our Supreme Courts failed to intervene, where a woman's right to an abortion, safe abortion, is now going to be undermined, and it's going to set a precedent. Again, this is the Mars combust. I said this Mars combust is no joke. It's going to be going, and we'll see it play out socially now for a few months. These are very combustible times, and we're about to start this new moon in Leo. And again, this whole nature of how do we share the power? Again, Poor Falguni is that part of Leo that is about the joy and the delight in having the power. On an individual level, you can really experience that. You can really see that in your individual life. What you can do is, with the power you have now for the next 30 days or so, it's really going to be your opportunity to share the power you have, to share the wealth that you have with those that you influence, hopefully in a very compassionate way. The god of delight, Bhagha, is the ruler. And again, it's that part of Leo that delights in sharing, that wants to empower others, that wants to take the good fortune that they have and see it impact the world in the most beautiful and uplifting way. In a corrupted way, because we live in very corrupt times, this is where we can see, let's say, figures and political institutions or whatever that have power over us to take the power for themselves and say, yes, I delight in my power. Maybe it's in my power to tell a woman what to do with her body. If I can do that, and then I'm delighting in that and exploiting power. Or I'm delighting in, making someone get a vaccine they don't want, or delighting in, not wearing the mask and confronting the sheeple who are wearing masks anyway, just to hell with it, or whatever it might be. Whatever, again, I'm trying to talk about both ends of the spectrum. It's how are we using the power we have? Are we using it to be lazy and entitled? There's a real sense of entitlement right now that's going on. And this quality of entitlement with the power we have, we're entitled to use the power we have no matter what it does to other people. That's the shadow side of Purva Falguni. Because again, I use the example of the king who delights in his power by just being kind of lazy, being fed grapes and fanned, But the other laziness with the trappings of power is to just not care about those who can't take care of themselves. For example, like I said, just saying, well, I have this much power, so I'm just going to use it. If you don't like it, do something about it. And again, we have there's such an entitlement culture in this world now. Entitlement. People that have a certain amount of power feel entitled to keep it. And this is why, in many ways, this is one of the biggest struggles that's happening, I think, culturally now, my personal opinion, is there's an entitlement culture. Again, it comes around racial lines, it comes around gender lines. Let's just say the entitlement of men or conservatives or whoever it might be to tell women what to do with their bodies, for example. Listen, nobody who ever, I'm just going to speak about this on a personal level. No one who doesn't want an abortion, let's say, no women who don't want an abortion, it's only women that are going to get them, are being prevented from not having them. These laws are meant to stop someone, to prevent someone from doing something that you don't think they should do. It is completely invasive. Completely. 100%. Pro-choice is a total misnomer. Or pro-life, it's anti-choice. It's saying, because I don't think it's right, you can't do it. Now, again, you could flip that around with the vaccines as well, where people on one side are saying, because I think you should get it to protect us, you should get it. It's amazing how these parallel courses are playing out right now. People need to be very vigilant, because it almost makes everybody a hypocrite. Everybody who has a really strong opinion about this is going to be a hypocrite in one way or another. Oh, well, you're pro-choice when it's about protecting a woman's right to choose, but what about my choice to not get a vaccine? Or the opposite. We're set up to be really hypocritical right now, so we need to see both sides, isn't it? And we can say they're different choices. I'm not trying to create, I am creating a sort of false equivalence, but not really. It's a very tricky conundrum, and I could hair split this, but I don't really feel like it, to be honest with you, because it's too nuanced, and it's not the point of why I'm doing this. I'm bringing this up to show the issues and why things are at a very strong point of combustion and combustibility right now. And this quality of Leo and the power, individual power versus collective will. Notice how this is playing out in the world, but also in your life. This is a big thing that's playing out in your life as well. The power you have and sharing it and being intelligent and nuanced in your thinking right now as well, I think is very important. That's shown by other things, though, more than this cycle. And that's shown more than anything by this Mars and Venus shifts right now. As you see, by the time I move this forward to Monday, when we have this new moon, by Monday, Mars and Venus will be in different signs. This is today. Oops, hours. Let me go back days here. Oh, I'm looking at the comments. Everybody seems to be pretty calm. Wow, I expected by now, as soon as I brought up anything about vaccines or anything, it will be, you're just a blah, blah, blah. So I guess I'm doing good. All right. So as you see, I'm doing this today right now. And right now, as I'm doing this, Mars is in Leo and Venus is in Virgo. Very last degrees of debilitation. Step forward tomorrow. Look, boom. This time tomorrow, Venus is in Libra. That's a good thing. We need it. We need some diplomacy, some Venus in Libra. And Venus and Mercury are going to be quite strong for most of September, or for really, the rest of September. I talked about this in my September forecast, and we're going to need it. And I think it's right on time. And the things that I just mentioned are really reasons. What we're seeing playing out in the world, especially these two big issues that just happened here in the U.S., can hopefully bring some tolerance and some equilibrium and balance into things. This is, when Venus goes into Libra, we're much more aware of our individual responsibility and sense of value and respect toward others. And Venus has been in signs where she's not been so strong for the last few months, especially. This is the most difficult place for Venus, Cancer, Leo, and Virgo. So the last few months, that sense of diplomacy and whatnot has been sorely lacking. Okay. So we're going to feel a return to at least the potential for more civility for several weeks, almost a month, with Venus going into Libra starting tomorrow, September 5th. Then you see September 6th, or actually even by the middle of September 5th, even by the middle of tomorrow, Mars has now crossed over. But I would say September 6th, Mars now moves into Virgo. There's still combustion, because combustion is just a matter of degrees. It doesn't have to do with the signs that the planets are in. Mars is still here about 10 degrees now from the sun. So things are getting more and more combust. They're going to get very combustible by the end of September. But by that time, Mercury is also going to move into Libra. So there's a shift into more of this Libra energy in September anyway. But this shifting from Venus into Libra, out of debilitation, where, you know, when Venus is debilitated, we just don't feel like trying to hear the other person. And this is one of the things that I've noticed. We don't feel like listening to the other person's point of view. It doesn't really feel so good. We want to, you know, just kind of nitpick the other person's stories apart and say, oh, you're just blah, blah, blah. We don't really want to take the time and effort to actively listen and to actively try to compromise and hear their view. Venus in Libra does that. So we could definitely hear and notice this happening. And it's up to you to be a catalyst for that. You know, there's been many times where I've wanted to put some things out recently about all of these issues, but frankly, I just haven't felt like it. I've just felt a little bit irritated by it. Not irritated at people individually, but the discussion is irritating, and knowing that no matter what I say, I'm going to have half the people misunderstanding it and dumping on me, and I just don't feel like it, frankly. I'm not sure I feel like it anyway. It doesn't mean Venus and Libra is going to mean that I do. But I'm gun shy around this stuff now, because it does nothing but sort of polarize. I don't think it does any good, frankly, when I say anything, especially because I tend to see everything. I tend to see both sides of everything. And because other people don't, they just they just project their negative thing onto whatever part of what I said was negative that triggers them. And it just kind of triggers everybody. So I'm kind of like, to hell with it. So I'll try to come on and kind of show both points and then keep it to myself around the vaccines and around this. And of course, the big controversy now around ivermectin, and is it this or is it that or whatever. I'm seeing all of it. I don't feel like saying anything because, again, I think what we're really lacking in this world now is nuanced thinking, discrimination. Everybody is so polarized into extremes. It's either the gates of hell or angels and rainbows, and nothing is even close to that, especially now. So, but the thing is that with Venus going into Libra, there will be less of a desire to be so at each other's throats over this, or so polarized, and more of a catalyst, or feeling more like we're ready to try to actively put in the work to talk to each other and try to understand each other's perspectives, rather than just push people into other camps and to pathologize people and name call and, oh, you're this and that, you're this and that, and just sort of call people names because they don't agree with a very subtle point. And so again, Mars also going into Virgo, though, is going to come out of Leo, which, by the way, is less fired up. Let's put it that way. It's getting more combust, but it's less fiery now. It's more rational, more sensible, especially because Mars is going to be joined exalted Mercury here. And again, at least for a while, as we notice, because Mercury will be there, and we have exalted Mercury with Mars for much of September, at least around, I think it's the 26th. Or no, the 22nd. So Mars goes into Virgo, and he'll be with exalted Mercury until the 22nd. So Mercury is bringing more discrimination to this Mars, which, again, right now is very fired up around our principles, very fired up around them. He's combust and in Leo with the sun. So Mars going into Virgo, basically on the 6th, subdues that fiery quality, that ready to do battle and to fight over it, and brings more discrimination. Mars Mercury has a lot to do with things like jnana yoga and the yoga of discrimination, where we actually use the mind and intellect to destroy our own false ideas. So that could be really powerful from September 5th or 6th until like the 22nd. If you're a yogi and you practice these things, it's a great time to engage in those practices, right? These practices of jnana yoga, of the yoga of discrimination. Again, we never question our own mind and our own intellect. We're full of ego. We're full of wrong ideas. We've gotten things wrong so many times in our life, and yet every thought that flies into our head, we're 100% convinced it's right. Like, people never question. Like, maybe I'm wrong. Like, we don't. That's just on one level. Now, on a deep level, jnana yoga is saying my entire thought process is the problem. Jnana yoga actually is where we use the mind to destroy itself, to dismantle the ego. And we say, I'm not that thought, I'm not that thought, not that, neti, not that. And we just stay very alert and just burn all the karma of the intellect. It's very powerful practice. And this, quality will be very big and necessary, because again, what Mars does is wants to destroy something. We should be destroying our own mind and intellect with Mars, Mercury, and Virgo, but of course what we're going to do is try to destroy everybody else's. No, I'm right, my thinking is perfect, and you're wrong about everything. Every part of it. Because you don't think, that ivermectin is the cure, then you're just a sheeple buying into the whole thing, or whatever it might be. Or because you think it is the one thing, then you're a conspiracy theorist, or whatever it might be. It's just like totally out of our mind. We have no nuanced thinking anymore. Like, it has to be one is 100% this or 100% that now. No implications, no subtlety. Like, we don't do nuance anymore. So again, what this Mars Mercury really gives a potential for some real discrimination and some patience. Again, because Virgo is slower, Mercury is methodical and practical, right? So then we get to Jupiter. He goes into Sagittarius, into Capricorn, in again on the 14th. Jupiter is going to go back into Capricorn now, and and he's going to join Saturn. Now he's going to be there until November 21st. He'll be there. So this returning of Jupiter back into Capricorn finishes this transit that started right around when COVID started to be a big thing. Right when we started to get locked in our house and stuff, that's when Jupiter went into Capricorn. I think it was like March of 2020, right? And then he went through retrograde and then went into Aquarius in April of this year. And I said, from April until around this time, things were going to start to feel, we're going to start to feel inspired again. Again, after April, things started opening up again. People started getting out again, blah, 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 blah. And then Jupiter turns retrograde. Now look at what's ahead. Look at what we're seeing now with all the contentiousness, all of the okay, here we are now. This feeling of maybe being locked down again, or this thing again. This Capricorn is kind of squeezing Jupiter again. It's not Aquarius anymore. Like, okay, we move past it. We're going to Now it's like he goes back into Capricorn, and now we're going to have that feeling again, at least of the restriction and the feeling of being inhibited again. And I think there's some consequences that are going to start to, come up, and again around the masking and now we have the vaccines, and they could start to get much more heavy-handed as far as companies and the governments, businesses. Businesses have rights too. They have rights to want to say, okay, I only want vaccinated people here because I don't want I want patrons to know they're safe or whatever. That's also rights. Everybody, the only ones with rights aren't just the ones who don't want to get it or something. We all have rights. And so again, we these things have to be measured. They're not all or nothing. And again, the things are going to start to get more restrictive. By the way, I also said this when I did the class on Rahu and Ketu changing signs and moving into Taurus, which started September of last year. I said that we were going to want much more stability, that we were going to crave stability more. And it's one of the reasons why I also said that Biden would get elected, because Trump represented too much instability and Biden represented a safer choice. The other thing I said was this is also a recurrence transit, because the last time Rahu went through Taurus was after 9/11, and it's when we started the Department of Homeland Security, and we started all this security state, surveillance, new regulations, new bureaucracies to track people, feel oppressed. Now, back then, I was woke back then, by the way. I didn't just wake up last year. Some of us didn't just become woke with COVID. Some of us were woke back in like the first Gulf War and said, this is an absolute disaster. Some of us were woke even before that. But anyway, Patriot Act that just kind of slid through in 2003 while no one was looking, say no one, a lot of us were looking. I said that we needed to be careful about restrictions and prohibitions, that this Rahu and Taurus was also it also tracks with those things that happened in the aftermath of 9/11 19 years ago or whatever it was. And so these restrictions and the fear of these restrictions that we're seeing now, that we're very afraid of now, like, no, you can't mandate a vaccine, no, you can't, and now it's no, you can't have an abortion, no, you can't do this. We're starting to see these restrictions come about. Our world changed on 9/11 in many ways that aren't so much talked about. Not just that we started an endless war on terror that I'll give Biden credit. I mean, I'll give Trump credit first for starting the ball, and then Joe Biden saying, no, we're getting out. Could have been handled a lot better. There's no question. Again, another incredibly nuanced subject. Biden inherited something that Trump pretty much did totally, like negotiate with the Taliban, like pull all these troops out. There were hardly any troops left by the time Biden went in. Again, I don't want to get into it because nobody does nuance anymore, and I don't care to talk about it. But a whole series of events were set into motion at that time, the last time Rahu went through Taurus. And yeah, we're also seeing this parallel course of women's rights being taken away in Afghanistan and in Texas, in the U.S., and other southern states. Now it's going to happen. They start calling it Texas Taliban, which is not very good because the Taliban is something different, and we shouldn't put it on Taliban. It's conservative Christians. Let's be very clear, that's who they are. And those with privilege. When I talked about privilege earlier, that's what the privilege is as well. And so, but this is a recurrence transit, and it was predicted and it was known. I said it when Rahu went into Taurus, we want stability, but part of that stability is say, make me safe, government, give me regulations. Some of that is justified in a pandemic, but what's too far? What, again, these are not simple questions. And in an era where there's a lot of misinformation, I don't call it the age of information, I call it the age of misinformation. The age of misinformation and fanaticism. We're all fanatics, jacked up on misinformation, at least many. So Jupiter going back into Capricorn is going to show this restriction again. We're going to start to feel this like oppressed restriction again. And it's coinciding with kids going back to school and feeling, again, new regulations, feeling more regulated, feeling more controlled within the context of, again, all of this combustion going on with Mars. Around the end of September, start to watch and see what happens. I'll roll it forward, and you'll see around the end, this is when Mars gets when it gets the most combust, because you want to look at the degrees. Here on the 19th, it's 6 degrees. But look, by the end, it's now 5 degrees on the 24th. On the 27th, it's now it's less than 4 degrees, about 3. Again, the 28th, 29th, 30th, 13, 49, 16, 12. That's now 2.5 degrees. So again, the end of September into October, Mars is going to be really combust. And then and look, you can see here, this is now into early October. Mercury goes retrograde back. I'm going to do a whole video about Mercury retrograde cycle and whatnot. But these are the things that we're seeing right now. And trying to put this in a sort of social context as well, where we can kind of make a little bit of sense of where we're at. And starting with this new moon in Leo, that's coming up on Monday in Purva Falguni. Again, we all have power. You are a king in your own way, a king or a queen, or you should be. If you're not, then you're not living your authentic life, and you're going to be feeling the deficit. See, this is also what these cycles show us. They call us to action. Like, for example, someone who has powerful Leo energy, they're going to be empowered by this because they are probably feeling a lot of agency in their life and a lot of dominion and a lot of power over their world. Power is a good thing. Only in the modern sense is power a negative, because we've been corrupted, because we're ignorant in a very dark age. But to have power is a great thing. You see what I do with my power, right? I try to share it. Of course, I make a living at it too, and things come my way. But the stuff that comes my way is a byproduct of what I put out, right? That's what we all can be doing. Not to hold myself up as some virtuous model, but all I'm saying is that we all have a certain amount of power, and we want to share it. We want to empower others, right? And so this nakshatra of Purva Falguni, again, is that nakshatra where we first really connect to the truth of our power, to our true power. And once we dial in that our true essence, which again is not even something necessarily of this world, that's subject to change. It's not a matter of like personal confidence. You want to understand, your real power isn't something that wavers based on your confidence or your ability to meet the goal. Your true power is something that doesn't wax and wane. Waxing and waning, or shadows, or obscured by the clouds, that's not your true power. That's the ego interacting with your true power, where when you have the confidence to do something, then you do it, but it's erratic. The true power is something that isn't conditioned upon whether or not you think you can even accomplish it. Your true power is the thing that you must do because it's the best thing you can do. Again, think of a father with his child, or a mother with the child. At first, they don't really know what to do. And many times they're outside their comfort zone. They're not sure what to do. But does that stop them from doing their best? Their best. Not just, well, I'll try to get through it somehow. No, but they bring the best they can because they love that child more than anything. And so to not do the best that they could do would leave them with so much guilt and so much inner torment. Parents are tormented by the times when they didn't do the best they could have done for their kids because of their own shortcomings and whatnot. So this feeling empowered and enlightened with your own true self is really what Leo is about. It's what the sun is about and what Leo brings forth. Or it's trying to bring forth. So whatever it is in you that is the big thing that you're willing to sacrifice for, that thing that is not conditioned upon whether or not you have the confidence to do it or whatever, but that the best thing that you can do right now because it's the best that you have. If your life revolves around that, let's say it revolves around that all the time, like that's all you ever did, was the best that you could do all the time. Imagine that. But that's actually the truth. Every great guru says this. Find the thing that you love that you're not going to give up on. The purest version of the thing that you love that you can't get enough of, and then share it all the time. Share it in everything you do. Again, it doesn't have to be even a specific thing like with me, astrology or whatever it might be, but astrology is just a specific manifestation of something else, of a deeper love that I have for whatever it might be. I bring that same spirit. I try to bring that same spirit. I don't succeed by any means, but I should be bringing that same spirit to everything. The same spirit, right? And it's delightful to do that. The joy in, think of how good it feels when the thing that you love the most really touches other people. I don't mean where people are like, oh, that was really nice. I mean, when you can see that thing you really love, that you've put all of your heart and soul into, and you've taken a chance because you're vulnerable in that area of life. That's also the area where you're the most vulnerable. You're scared. Because what if I share this thing that I love so much and people think it's stupid or people criticize me for it? Do you know what that's called? That's called ego. That's your ego. And most people are either following the first thing, which is, I have to share that thing I love so much, and just lay it at the feet of God and do my best. And whatever comes back, that's fine. Because it's not about me or my ego. It's about the thing I love. Again, keep using the symbol of the parent. The parent doesn't try its best because it hopes that the child is going to appreciate it. The child never appreciates it. Children never appreciate what their parents did. They don't. Their parents sacrificed everything. Even though they might have done it really badly, they were doing their best. And kids often just remember the worst part of it. Now, I'm guilty. You know, my guru Amma says this, and she's always says this. Your parents sacrificed everything for you. Even they made mistakes, but that's still what they did, right? And so, are we doing that? And are we capable of more? So this is a big part. Leo, again, this is a new moon in Leo, where the sun is the ruler, and the sun is the one that's driving this. All of these cycles revolve around the sun and the moon. It's the sun cycle, because if the sun is in this Rashi, then the moon comes and says, okay, the sun is there and go, okay, now we're doing this. Now we're creating this. So now the sun is like, now we're creating your vision, your whole sense of power and joy. And Purva Falguni is share in it, delight in it, but first you need to connect to it. Those who are sharing and delighting in a dark form of power, it's because they're disconnected from their true power. They've identified themselves and their power as like Christian or this or that or, you know, skeptic or I don't know, whatever it might be. And then like, okay, so here's the thing that I can share, right? I'm gonna take some power, and I delight in doing this with my power. So again, I just want to, if people had, I actually said I opened this up for some questions. If people wanted to ask a question, I reserve the right to answer it or not. No questions about your chart, not going to answer it. But while I'm doing that, while you're maybe thinking of a question, I did want to put this again, this link to the web class on Mars Combust, because again, this is really important that we understand that we understand this combustion that is coming up. And again, we're already in the combustion, I should say, but as you see, it's getting more. It's going to get more intense by the end of September and into October. And again, I'm doing this for all 12 signs, including yours. First, I talk about what the combustion really is in the classical Indian astrological sense, the astronomy, and more. So you can really see what's happening when the planet is combust. It's behind the sun. It's called the Kolpa, Deep Tadi Avashta, which is like frustrated. And I talk about the power in that, like the purifying process that's going on, things like that. And I explain this in great detail, not just with Mars, by the way, but with other planets, how the combust cycle will affect you through 3 signs, because it's Leo, Virgo, and Libra. And I also even really describe this matrix of 3 signs and how 3 signs, there's a whole little kind of micro transformation that happens between any 3 signs. That's really quite powerful. And I explain that concept, and then I go through each of the 12 signs and how you'll feel it. And I talk about which important dates you should watch out for as Mars is going through these different signs. So again, it's free. You just go there, you click that link, register now. You can watch an instant replay, or you can pick a time to set in and watch it. But it's definitely something worth looking into. And as always, I see no questions. I was thorough. Paulette says, I'm surprised people find your subject matter controversial. I know, right? I'm just so like a pussycat. How can anyone find what I said offensive or controversial? Find a thing that you love and won't give up on. Roxanne, that's absolutely right. I've heard this from several great teachers. In fact, one guy who says this is Tony Robbins, who has a lot of very interesting stuff. He's a very rags to riches guy, and really, talks about things in a very kind of interesting spiritual way. And this is one of the things that he said: find that thing you won't give up on. Alma says it too. All great leaders understand, because the thing you won't give up on is the thing you love. And the thing you love is literally, love is the engine of everything. Your entire life is a product of all the things you love, in direct proportion to each other. And that includes the negative stuff. People love their negative stuff, and the people love it. And it's a form of love. People have a real romantic love with their darkness and their pain and their sadness too. And this constant back and forth, people love their ego. They love their what about this and that about that? And they love it. Try to take it away from them and see how much they love it. It's like taking away their child. All this stuff we have are in direct proportion. Everything in your life is an exact ratio of things you love in their exact proportion. Exact. And so this is, it's an ancient teaching, but it's also the most modern and the newest teaching. Jennifer has a question. What do you think the evolution of this energy is with different sides of our opinions, etc.? Well, that's a very general question. Evolution of this energy is with the different sides of our opinions, etc. I'm just not sure what you mean. The evolution is to, I think I just kind of talked about that. I feel like I did the whole time. The evolution is to not be so opinionated. Maybe what you're hearing is when I talked about Mars and Mercury, because opinions are very much about about Mars and this polarizing quality. So the evolution of this is to question your opinions, question especially your hard fanatical ideas. And again, I think we need a lot of discrimination in this world, because I personally don't see how people can be so narrow to the opposite view. That, of course, nobody wants anything mandated or anything, but to say that there's no effect when we can see that there is effect to millions of people opting out of something, but then they opt back into the medical system. If they let's say even with the vax thing, I'll get a little controversial. It's not that controversial. It's just observation. You say, I'm going to not do this because it's this and that and this and that. And then as soon as you get sick and deathly ill, you're in a hospital, taking up all the hospital beds. And now people can't get cancer treatments or other, again, that's just, it's not just one-sided. It's two sides. We do live in a culture. We do know that what things like the COVID did. And I'm not saying I'd like mandates or that I think things should be mandated. I'm saying either one. I'm saying we have to do nuance. We can't just say one side is the only side. And again, so the polarizing is the problem. And, you know, trying to find situations that are humane, I think are also going to be what we're all trying to do. Venus going into Libra is going to hopefully bring some space in that. Jennifer says, what's the evolution of Mars? Jennifer, go watch the webinar. That's all I can say. It's just, I did a whole webinar on this. Okay. And Laura said, totally appreciate your Gemini equanimous presentation of the two sides, especially Mars' role as Jnana Yogi, take us beyond the dualistic thoughts. Yeah. And again, this is the nature of Mars. I recently did a meme where, you know, Mars is designed to see things in black and white. But you have to understand the black and white nature of the mind is not for thinking, it's for doing. Doing. This is right, this is wrong, so do what's right. Do it. Don't argue about it. Arguing is now, speaking is Mercury's domain. Acting is Mars' domain. Laura, I know you've studied with me, and I've said these things. These are foundational principles, is the planets do not do everything. They do one thing well and everything else badly. Mercury is for thinking. Mars is for doing. So when Mars is thinking, they're called opinions. It's called argument. Mars thinking and talking is argument. Mars is here to act. And you know why we don't act? And you know why we don't do what's right? Because it's damn hard to do what's right. It's very easy to talk about what's right, particularly when it means that I can just say that you're wrong. Then, I'm an expert in what's right. And what's right is, coincidentally, the thing that's right is that you're wrong. That's the way the world looks to Mars in our mind. I know what's right. What's right is that everybody else is wrong. Meanwhile, I don't do anything that I say is right. So again, this is the problem with Mars and getting into all these opinions and this fired up kind of polarized, non-nuanced thinking. I just want what I want all the time. What's wrong with that? Well, because you're not the only one. So again, putting into practice what we say is right is much harder. And that's called discipline. The simple statement that I have said for years is that when Mars is powerful, we're willing to suffer for our principles. I'm willing to suffer for my principles, which means my principles and what I know is right is that I should be doing meditation. I should be stronger physically. I should have more self-control. So I'm willing to suffer, which means get up early, meditate, eat the right amount of food, be like a yogi. I'm willing to suffer for those principles of what I know is right. When Mars is weak, I make you suffer for my principles. I know what's right, and you should be doing it. You should be doing it. Everybody should be doing it. So this is kind of the thing, right? So we all need to be, if everyone took responsibility for what they know is right, if people just did what they knew was right, particularly people, they say they know what's right, are they doing it? Just try doing that. This is why the study of astrology is so powerful. I mean, at least the way I practice it and teach it, it's not just how to make predictions and whatnot. It's the actual living forces in life. It's literally what has made you. You are the sun. You are the moon. you are Mars, you are Mercury, but they're very pure energies. In essence, their essential quality is very pure. Mercury is the intellect. But again, it's to understand and figure things out. When Mercury is doing things, for example, it's kind of chaotic. Does this, does this, does this. Mars is the one to do things. Mercury is very much about all these details, but the details are very much about what comes in through the senses, organizing all of that. So we can lose the bigger picture. That's what Jupiter does. But Jupiter only does that. Jupiter doesn't get the details very well. So when Jupiter interferes with the details, you know what happens? It becomes fanaticism, dogmatism. Those details, who cares? Da 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 da. Well, Mercury cares because, who cares about what I said and all of my hypocritical words? This would be Jupiter. Who cares? Don't pay attention to all those details. Just believe, said Jupiter. Yeah, but that's not right, because when you're saying words, again, Mercury is the one listening. And if the words don't make sense, then, again, that's not the job of Jupiter. So each one of these planets are actually very segregated energies. And of course, in the chart, they're all mixed together. So again, first we have to be able to take it all apart before we can put it back together. So like in my certification course, almost the whole first course is dissecting all of this stuff so that first people understand what the heck they're looking at. Because first people try to learn it with like all the chemicals already mixed together, like the stew is already made, and then they try to analyze it. No, first you have to go back earlier and see what went into the stew. First, what went into it. Then you can analyze why it tastes a certain way based on this ingredient and this much of that ingredient and whatnot. The chart is kind of like the stew that's already been cooked. You can't really read it correctly unless you go back and see what are the actual ingredients. What is a carrot? What is an onion? What is water? Right? And again, so that's what the planets are. They're like the building blocks of all of it. So each one of them are very segregated, pure energies, right? And so they're always kind of mixed up, especially by the time people start trying to read the chart. They've already made 1,000 assumptions. Most of them are not correct. And I'm not trying to be rude. It's just that I know. This is why I won't even really teach people. That's why I'm like, go through certification course or take this or do that, because many times they're starting at a place that's much more advanced than they realize, or they make way too many assumptions. And by the way, I'll just say this last part of it. This is everywhere in society now. So for me, watching what has been swirling around for the last year and a half or so, especially since COVID, is very much a kind of macrocosm of something that I've seen for decades in teaching astrology. I've seen people coming at astrology with almost no understanding of anything, thinking they got it all figured out already, and just way up here going, forever. Now I see it happen like with all of these issues. I'm like, my God, I've been seeing this forever. Like, people need to go back and actually get grounded in some of the stuff that's going on, even in the world, even especially like with politics and the wokest part, and like how we got to where we are right now, even in the culture and in the world. Like, even I'll just say, and I'm not going to say a side or anything, but even with politics, the first election I voted in was 1988. Yeah, I'm that old. But I remember the first Bill Clinton term. I remember when the Democrats pivoted to the right after the 1994 midterms and Newt Gingrich's contract with America. Yeah, I'm that old, but I'm saying some of us have been watching this stuff for a long time with the political stuff, or have been woke, or whatever you might say to this, for a long time. So when a character like Trump comes along, or the media doing something, that's like, yeah, it's been going on a long time. It's different, but it's not as different as those who are like, oh no, all of a sudden I thought Obama was this, and now I realize, oh, now I get it. And then it's just this gigantic conspiracy that goes off the cliff because you just woke up to this in the middle of a paranoid pandemic. I'm just sitting there like, okay. Anyway, I didn't plan on saying all that, but I did anyway, so whatever. So now I lost you, and now everybody hates me. No, I don't really care. Look, anyway, so I appreciate people have showed up and had a kind of informal chat here about the about what's coming up this month, and also some of the stuff that's going on. And you know, if you appreciate this, share it with others, and we'll talk soon.